I'm Tara C. Sinclair with Creations, and I'm going to make a rope basket today. Come join me. I'm a BERNINA of Canada Ambassador and will be sewing on my B570 QE. You'll find me at creations.com or on your favorite social media, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. To make this, you're going to want 5mm wide cotton cord, lots of thread, and cork or vinyl for the base. Head to my website to see my favorite suppliers and the supplies I use. Today, I do have the 5mm cord as I'm making a larger project. You could consider 4mm or 3mm if you're making a smaller project. Start with a piece of Scotch tape to wrap around the end of your cord just to keep it from fraying badly while we work with it. Wrap it quite snugly all the way around. We want it to not move on us. We're then going to trim most of it off, just keeping approximately 3mm of it still on the cord. Now we're going to create a spiral with the tail on the right-hand side coming out towards your body. Takes a little bit of finger dexterity and some patience. The spiral needs to be quite tight as it is the beginning of your base. You also want it to be just a little bit bigger than your presser foot, so you can comfortably get it under that foot and stitch it together. Just some forewarning, it could take you a few tries before you get it tight enough and big enough. And to hold it in place. Certainly took me a few. Before you start sewing, ensure you have a standard presser foot on, one that's good for straight stitching and has a space for zigzagging. On the B570 QE, I'm using presser foot 1D. I then set the stitch to stitch number 1, which is your regular straight stitch. And I've maintained the regular stitch length for my machine, which is 2.5mm. I engage the dual feed and pop a seam compensation tool under the back of the presser foot just to keep that foot even as we start. I sew straight across all the pieces of cord and back. I want to reinforce this really well with back stitching so it doesn't undo on me. Then do another line of stitching perpendicular to the first one, giving me an X in the center of my base. Again, I need that to be reinforced really well, so I'm back stitching over it. Once we have the base held together, I'm going to zigzag the cords together, starting right along the curved one cord in from the outside. On my B570 QE, I change my stitch to number 2, increase the stitch width to 4.0, and increase the stitch length to 2.0. This stitch to be wide enough to go down in one cord and then come down in the cord next to it. That's how we're going to hold these two pieces of cord together going all the way around. As you get going, you may need to play with your stitch length and stitch width. So when I start sewing, I do only get a couple of stitches, then I need to lift my presser foot, rotate the spiral base a little bit, and do a couple more stitches. This is just for the center so that we have a good strong base. Doing this slow process, I do go around my spiral base at least twice, getting that spiral base really strong. I then stop with my needle down, lift my presser foot, and unwind that cord so that now I'm stitching the long straight cord into the round. Here you want to keep the space between the two cords directly in the center of that presser foot. I find it easier to use a different foot, so I'm going to do a back stitch to lock the threads in place and cut the threads, and I'm going to swap that out. My preferred foot for this is the edge stitch foot, or 10D. This foot has a guide in the center to keep the cord on the right coming in straight and even, and the spiral base on the left with the curve against the metal piece. As the spiral base grows bigger and bigger, I find it gets easier to turn and I can stitch faster and still be accurate. While I'm stitching in the round, I just guide the base with my fingers, not pushing or pulling, just guide it. Allow the feed dogs to keep it moving through the machine, and I'm just rotating it. You can see my right hand is just guiding the cord, keeping it coming up at a nice even pace with no pressure on either the spiral base or the cord. I'm going to keep going until my base is about 24 inches wide because I'm making a pretty big basket. I do recommend starting with a slightly smaller project than this one. Once you have that base, take a moment to admire it. You put some hard work in there, and that was not quick and easy. To add a solid base to the bottom of that spiral, I've cut a piece of cork that's big enough to sit underneath the spiral base. You could use vinyl if you want. As I add my next round of cord, I'm also zigzagging the cork in place. Before you add this bottom, you could actually consider embroidering on your spiral base or doing some kind of decorative stitching, maybe even some applique. Endless possibilities. Once I finish that first round with the cork underneath, I trim off the excess material. I'm trimming right next to that outside cord. Be sure you don't cut your cotton cording though. We're going to do one more round of stitching that sews down the edges of the cork or vinyl. I use a pin poked into the cording as a marker for starting and stopping. And that can be any time I have to start and stop or know where a point is on that cording. Once you're ready to start the walls, lift up the base. As you sew your next piece of cord all the way around, you'll want to keep that base held at an even angle. So keep it consistent here. So long as you want to continue to add curve to the wall, keep that base lifted. But once you're ready to sew straight up the wall, keep that wall right against the bed of your machine, so that you're adding directly onto the top of that cord. Keep sewing the cord all the way around the basket, keeping the wall flat against the bed of the machine. If you want to change out the colors, snip the cord you're working with and butt the end of the new cord up against it. Be sure to reinforce the stitching where you've added that new cord by backstitching. You really don't want that to come apart. Once you're ready to create your handles, reinforce your stitching really well with some back stitches. I then measure 8 inches of cord to be my handle, and I start sewing that 6 inches away from where I stopped on the basket. So my handle is 2 inches longer than where it's sitting on the basket. Be sure to repeat this directly across to the other side of your basket so your other handle is even. To find that matching location, I fold the top of the basket in half and place those markings with a pin. Again, don't forget to reinforce your stitching where the rope sits against your basket. As I continue to go around the basket, where the handles are, we're stitching only against that one cord that started to create the handle. However, we're also sewing against the body for the rest of the basket. The first round can be pretty tricky, so do take your time. And then I go around the basket 6 to 8 different times with the cording to give my handles 6 to 8 pieces of cord in it. When I'm ready to finish the basket, I cut the cotton cord and I backstitch. Then I change the presser foot back to the regular presser foot 1D and zigzag over the cord end, tightening it up against the basket. Look at that beauty! Now Lincoln has a new dog toy basket with a solid cork bottom on it. Sure holds a lot. He may not look very impressed, but I think it looks pretty darn good in my living room. Don't forget to share all your baskets and bowls with me, and find me at creations.com.